Hey guys, I'm
Hey,
back.
hi. How'd it go?
It's a lot colder up there than it is down here. I think it was like below zero.
Oh,
The wind was just howling. It was like the snow was going sideways and the sun didn't even peek out one time. It was horrible. It's a good thing you weren't there.
oh, that's too bad.
You
Yeah.
smell like smoke. Were you by a campfire?
No, I had to fight a forest fire when I was up there. It's the only thing that kept me warm.
Oh, sorry, Joe.
All, all I had was that little garden trowel in the back. And my tomahawk. But I got it taken care of. It's all safe up there now. Well, I'm out here all alone today. Linda is home nursing a broken ankle. My oldest daughter and her small daughters are at the house spoiling Linda. If they spoil her too much, though, I'm sending Linda to her house, to my daughter's house, to finish recuperating. Hope they know that. These are the Little Belt Mountains in central Montana. I come out here with Linda and we play a lot. And being out here reminds me of a particular story that I want to tell you. Well, I think I got enough to get a fire going. I'll get busy with that. Just getting at some nice dry stuff here in the middle of the woods, middle of these branches, so I can get a fire going. And I think we can get it going with this. Cheated. I used the lighter and fire starter. But I used my favorite fire starter. It's just kind of a wax-soaked, well, it's dried. How do I explain this? It's called bagasse. You might know it better as canik board. They used to make ceilings out of it in the old days, in the 40s and 50s. Bagasse is actually dried sugarcane leaves. More information than you needed, I know, but that's what it is. But you buy it in the store. It's a fire starter, and it's a particularly good one. It comes in squares that you break up. I'll show you. They look like this. It's just the best stuff. It lasts forever. Burns a long time. If you don't use that, or if I don't use that, I like Vaseline soaked cotton balls or pitch or something from a tree. Well, hopefully that gets going. Well, it's a fairly nice day. Temperatures in the mid-40s. Snow is still pretty deep though. I had to be real careful getting in here. I'm going to be extra careful getting back out. Make sure I do get out. But this is a campground up here, and of course there's nobody here but me. But I'm making good use of the fire pit. Linda and I started playing around in the Little Belt Mountains when we first got to Montana almost 23 years ago. We got here on October 1st when I started my new job, and we were right out of Hawaii. Linda was right out of Hawaii. I purposely looked for an apartment in town where the rent included the utilities, because I wanted Linda to be able to dial that thermostat up just as high as she wanted it to stay warm, because we were right in time for winter. When we lived in Hawaii, we bow hunted a lot. I would go bow hunting twice a week. Just loved bow hunting. It was usually for wild boar, sometimes for mouflon or feral sheep, feral goats, but mostly for wild boar. But I really was excited about coming to Montana and being able to hunt deer. So within a few weeks after we got here, hunting season was in full force, and I got my license and away I went. Grabbed my bow and headed for these woods right here. I was really excited that morning driving out here. Man, you can't believe how excited I was. Now, Linda wasn't into it at that time. She eventually got into hunting with me, but at that time, she wasn't. She wasn't even into shooting except for what she did as a child. She went on to become a champion long-range or long-distance rifle person, but that's another story. But I was excited that morning, and the only vehicle, we were poor, we were just broke, we were literally paycheck to paycheck, and all we could afford was this old 1991 or 92 Ford Probe. That's not a vehicle you go hunting with. It had one saving grace, well, two. It ran really well, and it was front-wheel drive, and it handled the snow pretty darn good. And I had good tires on it. Where was I going to put the deer? Well, I knew that if I got a deer, I was going to have to cut it up in small pieces to get it inside, but I brought a tarp along and I was prepared for that. I wasn't familiar with the mountains, but I was familiar with being in mountains and hunting. I just wasn't familiar with these mountains too much. But I brought all my stuff, and if anything, I was dressed overly warm because I didn't know how to dress. So I had on just about everything I owned. And I got up to a place that looked good. I got out of my car, got my gear together, and I started into the woods. And it wasn't 5 or 10 minutes later when I was walking along and I looked up and there was 3 deer looking at me. One of them was a nice little buck, little forkhorn. Not big, but big enough. And for if you're bow hunting, beggars can't be choosers. And he was just standing there about 20 yards away, just looking at me. I went ahead and I slowly brought my bow up. Of course, I already had an arrow ready, and I was just getting ready to aim when I remembered something. What I remembered was that what I had read, they say that when a deer hears the thunk of the string, the thwack of when you release the string, the deer jumps. It's called jumping the string. And I read that you needed to aim a little bit low, because when the deer jumps, the deer goes down, and in slow motion, the deer goes down and then jumps. So you need to, the deer is going to jump as soon as it hears the string and before the arrow gets there. So I purposely aimed a little low. Pulled back, aimed and released. That deer didn't move. He didn't flinch. He just stood right there looking at me, and that arrow went a little lower than I was aiming and went right across the bottom of his chest. And I didn't even think I hit him. But of course he ran off, the other deer ran off, and he was on a hillside. And I walked up, and there was a few little drops of blood there. So now I had a wounded deer on my hands, and I started tracking that deer. I waited a while, in case it was a mortal wound, which I seriously doubted because I saw where the arrow went. But I waited a little while, and maybe a half hour or so, and then I slowly took off after that deer. But there was a problem. Little break of the story here. It's a sweet potato. Wait till you see what we're having for lunch today. Hope I don't burn it. Well, the problem was we had about 12 to 15 inches of fresh snow, just powder. And on the one hand, it made looking for those little tiny blood splatters really easy, and I could follow the deer's tracks really easy. On the other hand, it made the going a little tough, but it was just powder, so I was able to I didn't own snowshoes, didn't have them. So I took off and started traversing across this hillside. It was in the forested hillside, through the trees and following that deer. I followed that deer and I followed that deer. And once in a while I could see where it bedded down, and I'd see a few drops of blood. So I kept after it hour after hour after hour. I kept after that deer. But as the day wore on, I realized that it was getting late. And I figured I better just give it up. I figured that deer was fine because of the way it kept moving, and it was only a little bit of blood, and I knew where that arrow went, and I thought, well, I better just leave this deer alone. It's going to heal up and be okay anyway. So I started to head back to my car. And that's when I realized I had another problem. When I started heading back to the car, I realized I was lost. Things did not look right. I started out heading north, and I always make a mental notation of which direction I'm going. And I started out, I knew I was heading north. But I was so focused on that deer's tracks and tracking that deer and recovering that animal that I didn't realize that I was slowly throughout the day making a gentle curve to the right, because the hillside also curved to the right. And I had also crossed over a couple of hills, and I got twisted around. Now, when you get twisted around, things don't make sense. You look at your compass, which I had, and my compass didn't make sense. I knew my compass was right, but it didn't make sense. What I had to do was make it to the top of the mountain that I was on. I was still on a hillside, and I made my way up to the top of the mountain so I could see. And I knew enough to bring a paper map, which I did, a map of the area, had it in my pocket. I made a habit of that in Hawaii, because you can get lost in Hawaii too, especially on the big island where we lived. But I got to the top of the mountain so I could see the mountain peaks, and they didn't make sense. But I studied that map and studied that map, and it started to sink in what was going on. And I started looking at the shape of the mountains and the shape of them on the map. And then I started I started to recognize which ones were which, and I took bearings off of two of them, and where they crisscrossed, that's where I was. Man, I was like 4 miles from the car in heavy snow. So I figured, okay, the sun was really low. It was going to go down in the next 20 or 30 minutes, and then I would just have civil twilight after that. I had to start making it back. So I did. I started to head back. Well, when I got out of the trees, I ran into another problem. The problem was, during the day, it had gotten up to about 45 degrees. And when I got out of the trees, where the sun had been shining, the top of that snow had melted a little bit and it crusted over. So I had to lift my legs really high with no snowshoes to go through that crusted snow. And the first thing that happened is I had, I got bad knees. Well, my right knee went out and locked up, and I could not bend my right leg at all. Couldn't bend it. I made my way over to a small sapling and I cut it down and I made a crutch. And I started making my way out that way. What a pain. Of course, I had my pack on, I had my bow, which I slung over my shoulder. And step by slow step, I made it out back to the car and got home pretty darn late. That's the story I wanted to tell you. But the thing is, when you go into the woods, I had a couple things going for me. I had that compass. I knew how to use it. I had a paper map. But when you get lost in the woods, your brain gets befuddled. You don't want to believe what your compass is saying. I believed mine, but that doesn't mean that it made any sense to me, because it didn't. But what normally happens to people when they get lost in the woods is exactly what happened to me. It always involves, in my opinion, it always involves an imperceptible curve. So you think you're going one direction, but as the hours wear on, you're actually twisted around. Watch out for that when you head into the woods. I'm going to enjoy this afternoon. If I don't burn my sweet potato here. Get some water on for some coffee too. Looks like I'm gonna get some hot coals I can put that potato on after a while. Of course, it goes without saying that we're going to make cowboy coffee. That's just what we do. Little pine flavor won't hurt it none. Little Kent Rollins style right here. I'll tell you one thing, that sure smells good. I got this sweet potato double wrapped in foil, and this is a little stove that I'm going to cook on here in a little bit. But the sweet potato is buried down in here, or almost buried in. I keep throwing hot coals on it, and I know it's going to take a while to cook, but I got a while, so I don't care. I'll take this off for now. You know, I've ruined 2 pairs of good boots, good waterproof Gore-Tex boots, by standing too close to the fire. Now, it's hard to do with, you got a steel ring around it, but if you're standing next to an open fire and your feet are cold and you get them up close, by the time you're, just like this far away, by the time your feet feel warm, you've ruined the Gore-Tex in your boots. I've done that twice with expensive boots. Oh, the fire sure feels good on a chilly day. It's not too bad, but the wind's starting to blow now, so yeah, fire does feel good. Wish Linda was here. You know, come wintertime, it gets harder to find things to do as you get older. In our younger days, man, we'd get out and go snowshoeing. We even tried cross-country skiing one time, but that didn't work out so hot. Linda kept, you know, she's got that equilibrium problem. Well, she kept falling down all the time. And she called me into the shower, you know, pardon that, but she says, "What's this bruise on the back of my leg?" It was the shape of her ski. Just this straight line like this where she had fallen on her skis. But we used to do snowshoeing all the time up here. But you know, snowshoeing now, you know, when you get arthritis and stuff like that, and you got to walk like this, that's not so. If you watch Survival Russia, he would say, that's not so awesome. But wow, what a beautiful day here. My goodness. Of course, the secret to good cowboy coffee is to just pour a little bit of cool water over it just to make the ground settle to the bottom, just a little bit. I like to put a little bit down the spout just to kind of wash any grounds down the spout too. Of course, I made the coffee a little extra strong to allow for that extra water too. Ought to be really good. What I brought to eat was char siu pork that I've had marinating since last night. It ought to be good. Well, it turned out just a little bit crispy on the outside, but I tasted it. It is so good. Now we have to see about the sweet potato. How did it survive? Is it all charred or what? I have to find out. Oh no, it's not. Oh wow. Okay, wow, perfect. And of course, no Asian meal is complete without kimchi. Well, the only thing missing now is some coffee. Oh yeah, look at that. Very nice. Oh, perfect. Well, you guys, I'm just going to sit here where I can enjoy this coffee and the rest of the afternoon. Thanks for coming along. I hope you enjoyed this video. I sure enjoyed being out here. We'll see you around. Yeah, that's good.